Hey, everybody. Welcome into the Leaning Into Leadership podcast. This is episode 260. My guest today is someone who I've known and respected for a long time. And somehow, until now, we had never actually sat down for a full conversation here on the podcast. George Couros is one of the most influential voices in education. When it comes to innovation, culture, and leadership, man, George is the person you think of. But what I appreciate most about George is how he never positions himself as the person with all the answers. Instead, he shows up as a learner, as a reflector, someone willing to share what he's gotten right and what he's gotten wrong along the way. In today's conversation, we talk about how writing and blogging helped George to find his voice, not just share it. We dig into what it really looks like to lead during contentious, polarizing times and why trying to win arguments often pushes people further away. We're also going to spend some time talking about George's newest book, Forward Together, Moving Schools from Conflict to Community in Contentious Times, and the mindset shifts leaders need if they truly want to bring people together and not just manage the noise. Now, this is a thoughtful, honest, and at times really fun conversation about leadership, learning, self-care, and what it takes to move communities forward when things feel kind of heavy. Now, before we dig in, I would like to take a moment and thank the amazing sponsors that we have who make this work possible each and every week. Today's episode is brought to you by DigiCoach. If you're a school or district leader trying to bring clarity and consistency to walkthroughs, feedback, and instructional coaching, DigiCoach is a game changer. DigiCoach helps leadership teams collect meaningful data, align feedback to what actually matters, what they really value, and turn observations into real growth conversations, not just simply compliance checklists. If you're serious about instructional leadership and building trust through coaching, DigiCoach is absolutely worth the look. Make sure when you go and check them out at digicoach.com that you tell them that I sent you, that you heard about them here on the Leaning Into Leadership podcast. Once again, that's digicoach.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by Hey Tutor. Man, Hey Tutor is a company that is doing incredible work to support students through high-impact, evidence-based tutoring in both English language arts and mathematics. Now, Hey Tutor partners with school districts to provide in-person and online math and ELA tutoring aligned to standards. It's staffed by trained tutors who DigiCoach recruits, hires, manages, and trains, so schools aren't left scrambling to make it all work or having more on their plate. It's real support during the school day or after the school day, designed to close the gaps and give students what they actually need to succeed. Make sure you check them out, heytutor.com. Use the link down below in the show notes if you would, please. That lets them know that you heard about them here on the Leaning Into Leadership podcast. All right, let's get into this conversation now with my friend George Couros. You are going to love this. Make sure you grab a notepad and a pen and take a bunch of notes, and I'll see you on the other side. All right, everybody, welcome into the show. My guest on the show today, George Couros. Super excited to have this conversation. Known George for a long time. Have yet to have him on the podcast. I cannot believe that, but excited to finally have this opportunity. George, welcome into the podcast.
Hey, I swear, did I just not see you in Orlando like a little while ago? You were at...
It wasn't too long ago.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
And I want to say, I really appreciate you because every time you see me, you just light me up. Like, you make me feel so good about myself. And I know you do that with so many people. So I just want to, thanks for having me on. And you're someone you're honestly a light. So it's the best way I can describe you. And like, online, and then and then I see you, and you're just I remember we were in some like weird like space that was like kind of between the outdoors. I just remember you specifically saying,
See? Dwight Carter was with us, right?
Right?
I think you were with Dwight. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
See? I
I don't
remember this.
remember exactly when that was, but, yeah,
I
I remember it vividly. Yeah,
it
yeah.
might have been like the Jostens conference. I don't know if
There
that's
you go.
when it was.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
a
I
Renaissance
definitely remember seeing
conference.
you there, and yeah, you're just a light man. You just attract
Yeah,
people to you. So I really appreciate you because I know you make people feel really elevated. So all the people that had you as their leader are pretty lucky.
I really appreciate that. And while we're paying compliments, I was gonna open with this, and I just completely forgot this was gonna be my lead in. I stepped out from public education after 26 years about 4.5 years ago. And stepping into the leadership space, there are a handful of there are a lot of people in the leadership space, but there is a small number of people that, for want of a better phrase, I'll say I look up to, but it's more of a want to model yourself after, or you consider folks like yourself as a real trailblazer in the space. And, the fact that, we've had an opportunity to know each other for quite a while is really, really cool. But I don't think I've ever had a chance to tell you that. So
Yeah,
you've
yeah.
definitely been kind of that I heard Dave Schmidt one time. I heard Dave give a keynote, and he was talking about the green dot for runners, and how that's kind of this thing out in front of them that they're always chasing. And somebody told me once when I stepped into space, don't compare your beginning to somebody else's middle, but if you think about individuals like yourself and where you're going, it's kind of almost like this is somebody. Not only do I want to follow you on social media, I want to learn from you and just continue to be inspired by you. So thank you
That means a
for
lot, man.
that.
I'm way better giving compliments getting them, so, like, I stop. But I appreciate you, man. I think, just like you, because I know you do this very well, I just I'm not an expert in anything, I'm just someone who likes to learn, and I think that you make your learning very visible, and, I think that's what inspires people is to see the ups and downs too. I think that's what I've always tried to do, so hopefully people can learn. I actually say this in my new book, I hope my, like, hindsight can be someone else's foresight, some of the mistakes I've
Ooh,
made.
that's good.
Yeah.
That's really good. I love that quote. That's really strong. So let's do this. I mean, we don't need to go through the whole, this is who George is, that kind of stuff. I talked a little bit about it in that cold open. I want to go back to kind of what for most people probably think, oh, this is what put George on the map. The innovator's mindset, your blogging, and then, of course, since then, you've inspired so many other people. Good mutual friend of ours, Lauren, talks about it quite often about how, you've been Lauren Kaufman,
Mhm.
how you've been an inspiration to her and got her to start blogging. But let's go back to like George's origin
Yep.
here. Obviously, I know you were an educator, and
Yep.
then this opportunity came. So I don't know, pick up wherever you want, and let's just go.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm very proud that I've pushed a lot of people and they'd probably say aggressively to write
Yeah.
and to share. And a lot of times I will sit with someone like Lauren and I'll listen. I'm like, this is not fair that I'm getting this, but no one else is. Like, you need to. And I remember actually pushing Lauren in front of her. Like, she asked me to speak and she had a group of people. Like, she asked me to speak to her mentor group. And I'm like, you should be blogging. She couldn't really say no because she brought me in. So it was kind of funny. And she's an incredible writer and incredible thinker. So I think I know she benefits from it, just the processing, but so many other people benefit, which is, why I try to push people to do that. But I first started really getting into writing and sharing my thoughts, not because I thought I had anything good to share at all. I actually was a principal at the time, and we were trying to figure out how to do digital portfolios with our students. And I didn't want it just to be, hey, we're going to take a picture of something or make a video and just create a link. I wanted the kids to be reflective on the process. So we were trying to teach them this stuff for about a year and it was failing. It was just not working at all. And I'm sitting here thinking, I can't really teach this to kids because I've never learned it. I don't understand it. So I'm just going to go first. So I actually tried some different spaces and I actually went through the process, learned how to create. So my blog or my website, which is, my blog, actually started as a principal, and it was the only reasoning was because I wanted to teach it to our students and to teach to my staff. And as I went through the process, I was like, wow, this is really helpful. Like, this is I'm really having to think about what I talk about, and I know your role in administration. Ideas are really easy when they're in your head, but when you have to say them to people, it's a lot harder to get out. But when I was writing about them, it was giving me an understanding of different viewpoints because I had to consider them because I didn't want people pushing back in the comments, to be honest with you. I'm like, I need to think about different ideas. And then I remember one time somebody reached out to me and they said, I love your blog. Would you come speak? I'm like, what are you talking about? And they said, yeah, we'd love you to
Yeah.
speak at our school. I'm like, yeah, I guess I could. And they said, well, what's your fee? I'm like, you're going to pay me? That's a thing? No, it was all
Right.
accidental. Yeah, I had no clue. And then it just kind of morphed from there. And yeah, and I like, I really do enjoy writing and I really, I like telling stories and connecting in that way. But yeah, it was never with the intention of becoming a speaker. And I think it was just to learn and just try to figure this out with kids, and then it just kinda snowballed into what I'm doing today, which I think is yeah, it's like a dream job that I didn't know existed, which I think
Yeah.
is really interesting, and I guess part of my drive is I want kids to have the opportunities that I found accidentally, but I want them to intentionally find them. And I think that to me is kind of what drives me today because I feel really blessed, but it was accidental, and I want kids to be intentional about creating those
Yeah.
opportunities for themselves.
Yeah. Actually, my blog started very much the same
Yeah.
way. It was, at first for me, and I was a high school principal at the time. I wanted to find a way to communicate what was happening in our building without it just being putting something, as a Facebook post
Uh-huh.
for parents, because sometimes it was a little bit more complicated stuff.
Mm.
Whether it was, work that we were doing, in the process of creating our career academies or, explaining state accountability models and just some of the things that people just didn't understand. And I was sitting, ironically, we already talked about him, but I was sitting in Red Wing, Minnesota, in a top floor bar in this old, old, old hotel. I can't remember the name of it, with Dwight Carter.
Mm.
And just asking, and at the time, Dwight was principal at Gahanna Lincoln High School. And I just, he was, again, somebody who I, very much am inspired by. And he said, well, have you tried blogging?
Yeah.
And I'm like, tell me more. I don't know. I mean, I've heard of it, but tell me more. And so he kind of inspired me to get going. He also at that time introduced me to Twitter and like
Yeah.
got me connected on Twitter and whew, man, back in the good old days of Twitter. That's not what it is now.
Yeah.
But that kind of, got me going a little bit too. And you said something in there that I'd love to have you maybe build on a little bit. And maybe this for anybody listening who maybe you have a blog or maybe you want to write a book or something like that. Something that I've discovered, but then also that I tell others who tell me they want to write a book or something. I think the more that you write about it, the more you speak it. As an example, my book Road to Awesome, that's the second edition. The first edition to the second edition, night and day in terms of the book, because I probably keynoted it 75 times and workshopped it and just gained so much clarity around what I was trying to communicate. And also, like you said, I learned so much more
Yeah.
in between version one and version two. So I'm really muddying this question with a lot of stuff, but
I gotcha.
talk a little bit about how either that blogging piece or writing a book or advice you give people when they're kind of stuck in that, how do I get it all out?
Yeah, I think a lot. I'm sure I don't know you publish books, and I think a lot of times people say I want to write a book, and because they want to write a book, and I'm like, that's not what you want to do because you're just basically checking off like a list and whatever. And I'm not saying you shouldn't have aspirations like that too, but what I find works most effectively is through the writing process. You kind of find the thing that you're interested in. So when I wrote Innovator's Mindset, it wasn't because I meant to write about this book called The Innovator's Mindset, I just noticed I kept coming back to the topic of innovation over and over again. And basically, by the time I was ready to write, I'm like, I have so much stuff that I've been really kind of diving into and kind of connecting. And you just kind of like, it's not just about sharing your voice, it's finding your voice. I think that's where that process comes into. And the funny thing when you mentioned, you started writing and part of it was to share with your staff and you know this as a principal, right? And you're gonna hate it, that you know it because it's true. I would say stuff to my staff and they were like, whatever. And then I would share like someone like you, your blog, and every week I'd say, hey, here are 3 blogs like you should read. And here's like a highlight from it. And they're like, oh, did you see that Darren? And I'm like, "Yeah, I said the exact same thing, but whatever. Whatever gets you going, right?" Because when it's
Yeah.
from someone outside, then it's all of a sudden the best idea ever, even though you've been saying it over and over again. And I know that's like a frustrating thing, but I also know it's a reality. So I had no issue saying like, "Hey, check out this person's post. Look at what this person's doing." They're like, "Ah, that's really interesting." But I was never just sharing that with my staff. I was sharing it with my staff and my community. Was my like, if I shared it and I challenge people, if I shared it in an email, half my staff wouldn't read it. But when I share it openly and the families were reading it, and then they started asking the staff's like, "I better read it because I don't wanna be the
Yeah.
person who's, isn't reading the stuff the principal's sharing out too." So, it was like an interesting process, and I think that's where and I still love doing that, building on someone's insights, a conversation. I just, like, even if it's, maybe it's not like I am like a diehard blogger. I will never not blog, and I wish more people would give it an opportunity. But if that's not your thing, like I had a conversation with Heidi Weeks. She's a superintendent in Illinois. She said something to me, and I posted like a 30-second video on it too, and with credit to her. And that's what I love about it. It's like building and the conversations that you have and digging deep. And then once
Yeah.
I actually said that about Heidi, now it's like now it's stuck in my brain. Now I have it, and that will be a conversation I have. And I think that's where the writing really helped me is if I and as a speaker, I will not talk about something I haven't written about because when I've written about it, then I know it way better. And I've kind of wrestled with it a little bit. If I just say it the first time, then it's a little terrifying. So I think
Yeah.
you find your voice is as much as you share your voice. And I think and you find what you're interested in. That's one of the reasons I was such an advocate for students doing it because I wanted students to walk out of school having an idea of what they want to do, probably like you and I, am so confused about like what am I going to do when you walked out of high school? You had no clue, and it's like the way school is structured. It's like subject, 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 subject. It is meant to be a little bit confusing. Whereas I wanted students to kind of figure out what do they want to do, and that's where that really helped me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and just listening to you talk about that makes me think a couple of things that, specific, not to keep going back to my blog, but one of the things through the work that I do now with so much leadership coaching and working in so many different schools, my blog almost every single week is me reflecting on something that I helped somebody through or that I
Right,
learned from
right,
them. Like you said, you heard Heidi say something, you're like, bang, let's turn this into something. I think there's a misnomer sometimes because I'm sure you get it all the time. I get it quite a bit. People will say, ooh, I want to do what you do.
right.
And there's a mistake. There's this misunderstanding that our job is to just know all the answers when I look at it as our job is to ask really good
Yeah,
questions and just get people to find their own way and occasionally give some guidance or hey, I tried it this way and it really bombed. So
yeah,
don't do this type of thing. Maybe just take that a little bit. And
yeah.
then I want to make sure we get to your new book here in a minute, but
Yeah,
go ahead.
I see this in groups I work with all the time, and I write about this a little bit in Forward Together. I call it the teacher paradox, right? So when you go in to work with a group of educators, they will judge you on how good you are if you give them stuff they can do the next day. And like, do you give them like strategies, practices they can do in the classroom right away? And I say, listen, when you that's how you're going to judge me. And I want you to really think about this. Do you know any other group of people who want to be told exactly what to do the next day, who also hate being told what to do other than educators, right? Like tell me exactly what to do, but don't you dare tell me what to do, right? It's interesting because when I bring that up, and that is what I call the teacher paradox is when I bring it up, people are like, yeah, that is totally what we do. And I don't like being told what to do. So I just say, like, listen, just similar to what you said, I'm just someone sharing some ideas with you. Ultimately, you have to figure out the solutions because I don't know your community. I do not know your context. And you are the experts in front of me. I'm just someone sharing ideas. And the expert is actually sitting beside you as well. And so we need to lean on each other for this. So hopefully some ideas will help, through that process. But I can't give you the solutions because I don't know your community. I don't know that. And that to me is like that's something that not only is really prevalent in Forward Together, but that's my whole thinking of innovators mindset. It's not. me giving you the answers. It's you figuring out your own pathway forward. And that's something I want to instill as much as the adults as I do the kids, right? That they
Yeah.
see themselves as the answer.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned Forward Together. So let's talk about that a little bit. I mean, you and I had a really good conversation before we hit the record button.
Yeah.
So title of the book, Forward Together, Moving Schools from Conflict to Community in Contentious Times. Love all the alliteration in there, by the way.
Yeah.
So what we were talking about before we jumped in and hit the record button was just kind of, what led you to the book. I want to go a little bit different direction with that. And you said something a minute ago about how you write to find your voice.
Yeah.
Tell Talk a little bit about this. I mean, you told me you wrote this book in about 2 weeks. Uh,
Yeah, I did.
Based on something you were inspired by and that kind of thing. Finding your voice in this book. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Well, and when I say that too, and I'm sure you're the same way, you I did write it in 2 weeks. Like the whole from idea the idea did not exist in my mind on a day in July, and 2 weeks later the book was done. And it was really an incredible process. And part of it is because there was a lot of stories, things that I've been building upon. And like that kind of notion of finding your voice is kind of in there, is that, I knew like that was already in me somewhere. I just didn't know it until I'm like, hey, I think I have a good idea for a book. And so through that process, but the other element of it too, and this is just me, when I'm in the midst of writing a book, I cannot function other than writing that book. Like everything, I'm dreaming about it. It's nonstop for me. And it's just kind of partly how my brain is wired. And it is kind of, it feels a little painful. And I'm like, I cannot do this for 6 months. I cannot live this way because I will not be okay after. So I'm just like, I gotta go, gotta go. So I just kind of set out, to do a chapter a day, and, kind of, if I can kind of like touch on what I'll be doing the next day through that process. But, a lot of it, there's some stories I share in my blog that are now like repurposed for the book that, really make sense to the topic. But, that's the benefit of writing all the time, is that sometimes you already have some of the stories ready to go and you didn't even know what they were for.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's really good. I'm sitting here kind of reflecting on my own writing process, listening to you. And, when I wrote the first edition of Road Awesome, it was the pandemic. So
Yeah.
I had some uninterrupted time for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I did the second edition, that was a little bit different, plus, then I was full time doing this. So I think I cranked that thing out in probably
Yeah.
about 2.5 weeks. But my most recent book, the one I did with Katie Kinder, Culture First Classrooms,
Yeah.
Katie and I both just had this incredibly busy schedule with both of us. Like I'd have a week I was available, but she wasn't, and vice versa. And I'm sure you've done this. When you write a book with someone,
Yeah.
that like grinds the gears to a halt at times. That was really, really tough to do because I'm like you. Once I have that, like, okay, I'm ready to go. I've got one I'm working on right now on leadership teams that's there, but not yet ready to go like to the keyboard. But I know once I go, it's just going to be,
Yeah.
I'll go hard for 3 or 4 weeks on it and just get it done. But
Yeah,
go ahead.
I did innovate Inside the Box with Katie Novak, and one of
That's
the
right.
things,
Yeah.
she is a prolific writer, and I do not. Basically, 6 o'clock, I am done. I can't do anything. I am like a zombie and watching TV and whatever. So I like to write earlier in the day, and she writes at night. And so the way we set it up is I would write in the morning, she would read what I wrote, and then she'd finish it at night. And we just kind of did that back and forth. So that only took us a few weeks as well. And we both kind of we just want to write, get it going. And through that process, I wanted to mention, because I've written with Allison Apsey, who's incredible, and others as well. One of my favorite mean comments that I've ever got, it is kind of like funny, but it was mean. Just that there was a review on Innovates of the Box that said, more Katie, less George. I was like, okay, whatever. I thought it was kind of funny. That's the reason I brought it up. I'm like, I get it, whatever. I want more
Yeah.
Katie too. So
Yeah.
so
That's
sometimes
funny.
actually someone had me speak, and they were choosing between me and Katie. I'm like, I guess more George, less Katie this time. And we kind of laugh about it too. So she's like my
Yeah.
little sister. I love her. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
That's fantastic.
it's kind
Yeah.
of like, that kind of hurts, but is also funny.
Right, yeah. Well, you were saying it before we hit record that, sometimes it's, the best thing to do is just kinda, poke a little fun at yourself, and that's what you do in this
Yeah.
new book. So,
Yeah.
um, I guess what that does is that allows people to maybe let their guard down a little bit, and I know here in Forward Together, one of the things that you've done is you share some of those stories that are like, "Yeah, that didn't work," or, here's how I did that, and yeah, maybe no. But it allows others to see themselves in you. So let's talk about that book
Yeah.
now. Talk about kind of the idea, the concept of where you were going with this. I mean, obviously, leading in contentious times, that's something everybody needs help with right now. Let's talk a little bit about the.
Yeah, so it's funny because I was like, I actually, and I talk about this a little bit in the book. The initial title in my head was like Divide Ed, like kind of play on word.
Sure. Yeah.
And I really, like, I was like, okay, like, I know this is not gonna be the title because I really hate speaking in negatives. Like, here's like this horrible thing. And as much, I know this sounds horrible, but I have worked with parent groups and I'm like, hey, here's all the way to empower kids to use technology meaningful ways. And like three parents show up. And it's, or you can have the session like, hey, your kids are going to be abducted online and it's wrecking them, packed house, right? You know that fear sells. And I'm just not interested in that. Like, so I was like, I want something a little bit, like a little bit different title. So I actually, worked on the idea of Forward Together, something aspirational. And then the subtitle, moving schools from conflict to community contentious times, I thought just really kind of summarized what this book is about. And the reason I tell you about the title is because I like, in, I said this there, I'm like super excited about this book. I think it can really
Mhm.
make a positive impact to people that want to bring communities together. And I will tell people the title and they're like, huh, that's really interesting. And I say, yeah. And I open it. And I actually remember when I was a principal, I just finished my principalship and I was in central office and I went to a conference and there was someone who basically said, you shouldn't be using tech with students. It's terrible. Don't do it. And I'm thinking, I just spent like my last several years really changing my school community. And now you're saying I was an idiot for doing this. So I actually, what did I do? I pulled out my blog at the time and I'm sitting in a session. I start blogging about how this person is so off and they're terrible in their thinking. And basically, their line of thinking is going to be irrelevant. And so I'm telling the story to people. I'm like, mentioning the book first time. And they're like, I don't think this is a good idea. Like how this is probably like, this is probably the opposite of what you're trying to achieve. And so
Yeah.
there, it's kind of funny because I see the reaction to me telling the story, and then I say, and then I ask the question, did that get the people that I was trying to reach? Like I actually, everyone who agreed with me just agreed with me, and everyone who disagreed with me, I pushed them away further. And basically, how often do we do that? How do we get those people that we're trying to reach? So then you can see like, oh, okay, I get it now. But it was really kind of starting like, here are some of the things I've done that really hurt the process of what I was trying to achieve and what I was trying to do. And now this has actually, changed things for me. My viewpoint is significant. And so there's some like, here's some of my, I don't want to say like it's autobiographical, but it's a lot of my journey of screwing up and a lot of schools doing the right thing. And you can see like I start figuring stuff out as I go. And obviously, but that is like I feel like it's really important that, especially in contentious times, point at yourself first, which is literally the first principle. Like, don't judge others when you've done the same thing. And then think about that. And when you share those stories and what you did to get out of it, that actually might kind of get people like, have I done that before? Like, have I actually pushed the people I'm trying to reach? And that's the intent of the book. And so as much as it is a very for lack of a better word, a contentious topic. The number one feedback is that the book is hilarious and there's a lot of, funny moments in there, which I'm trying to like, hey, let's lighten up about this stuff. But I'm still going to provide you some solutions, some ways. And I don't want to say solutions as much as ideas that, because I'm all about the same thing that I said earlier. And I say this like, I don't know what's going on in your community. So you got to figure this out. But hopefully, through some of the conversations that you have, maybe this book will inspire. That's when you start figuring out some of the pathway that you move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think that's an important piece too, we were talking about this before we hit record as well. Just it's hard to be that that expert in your own space, right? Like,
Oh,
you were talking about heading back to your province in Canada. I talked
yeah.
about speaking in my home state in Wyoming a few months ago, and when I listen to you talk, it makes me kind of think about, as individuals, we won't necessarily look at ourselves as what's in the way or what's the blockade or what's, maybe I am the fly in the ointment. But when I hear that about someone else, when I hear someone else tell a story about, I might see myself in them and say, wait a minute.
Have I done that?
Am I doing that? Am I doing that? Am I the problem? And maybe, just maybe, I might show up and ask some people I trust, do you see this in me? I mean,
Yeah.
am I the one who's kind of pushing away? And so when I hear that, I think that's one of the pieces that I haven't had a chance yet. I am stoked to read this book. It is
Thanks.
on its way. As we're recording this, of course, we've just had this wicked, wicked blast of Arctic weather come
Yeah.
through. And so I'm sure my package is sitting somewhere in Commerce City, Colorado or something, but the place where packages go die is what we refer to that as. But I can't wait to dive into this book and
Yeah.
learn a little bit more. Tell me something that, in addition to what you've already talked about, but like, when we write a book, I'm certain you're this way too, but I want to make sure that I cause some kind of change, that I make people think, that I'm not necessarily providing a solution, but providing like a spark to make them say, oh, okay. What's something that with this book you're really hopeful you would love to at some point, instead of the more Katie, less George, that you hear something like, this book made me do this? Like, what would that be?
Yeah, so it's funny that you bring this up because I actually talk about a lot of the professional learning experiences that we should have. Should I actually show what's called? I can't remember where I referenced it, but it was like a story arc. There should be like emotional connection, right? And you kind of talked about this just now, and there should be ups and downs. And the one thing, and I've mentioned this on other podcasts too, but it is like I actually had to reread the book as we're doing the final edits, and I said, you do want this emotional arc in your professional learning because that shows that you're alive. Because do you know when else there's a flat line in your life is when you're dead. I kind of was like, what's that when I wrote that? But it is true. But I talk about this notion that there should be a combination of when you're reading this book and when you're doing professional learning of what I say call the warm bath and cold shower. Is that you should feel appreciated and warm and that nice feeling, but that cold shower should shock you a little bit and should challenge you. And so there is like some of those stories where you're like you see the great schools doing stuff. There is a chapter, and I split it up into the book into two parts. One is the principles, where it's like, hey, here are like the really foundational things that you need to like really hold on to, and will help you through bringing people together. They don't always work because humans are a variable, and so nothing ever has worked exactly the way we want it to, and acknowledging that. So here are some perspectives that when things go wrong, you still hold on to your principles because principles matter most when they are hardest to maintain. And in the perspectives, one of the chapters, it is just the title is titled "Somebody Hates You," which is right. And people like, as people they're like,
Yeah,
"What is this?" And it's just like, you listen, Darren. I'm sure you were an amazing administrator. Somebody hated you, right?
guaranteed. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. I got a list.
So the thing is that I think people kind of like appreciate being truthful about that. Then I talk about like someone who was basically swearing at me, who hated me and was like telling this, and kind of go through that process. And there's reasons why people can hate you. They think you're horrible at your job, or they think you're really good at your job and they're uncomfortable with that too, right? There is a spectrum of everything in between. And are we spending all of our time trying to get that person who will always hate you to like you, knowing it will never work, when you have a bunch of people who want to get better and you take care of them? And you know what they often do? They take care of the person that hates you. Like that person might never like you, but they might want to move forward because of all the other people that feel empowered. But a lot of times what we do, 80% of our time, 20% of our people. And one of my arguments is like you should spend 80% of your time on 80% of your people. That is where you need to
Yeah.
focus your energy because somebody's going to hate you. And is that what we try to chase? Is that person that will never like you? And so there's some of that cold shower, and you want that one is really connected with people because, and I even say, like, it's a chapter title, and I even say, how's that for a chapter title? Like, acknowledging it right away. Because
Yeah.
people, really, yeah, that one's connecting with people quite a bit.
That's really cool. I love that. And yeah, no truer words have ever been spoken
Right. And I
than
actually
that
even
right
said,
there.
I'm like, there is nothing more true in the book than what I just said. Somebody hates you.
Yeah, yeah, you're taking me to my 5 as I referred to them. I had 5 staff members that it didn't matter.
You're right.
I could have given them each $1,000,000 and they would have complained that they had to pay taxes on it. So,
Right, right, exactly.
something like that, right? But no, that's wonderful. I love that. Folks, we're going to put a link down in the show notes so you can go check out the book 100%. Make sure you go and get a copy of the book. George, our time has just absolutely flown by. I'm loving this conversation. I'd love to just keep going, but we're at that point in the show. I'm going to ask you the same question I ask everybody. This is the Leaning Into Leadership podcast. So, how are you leaning into leadership right now?
Oh, I saw that question when you sent me some of the notes prior, and I think for me, and I know you've probably seen this over the last several years, I've really dedicated myself to taking better care of my own health. And that is something, during COVID, I don't know how familiar are with this. I lost like 120 pounds. And part of it was, well, actually, a huge part of it that people don't want to, because I hate that it's true. I really got my eating in check because, I was, especially traveling, it's very hard to, have routine. Routine is very helpful for me for eating, but I've always exercised. But I found that has helped me really mentally in so many ways and really emotionally. And I think a lot of people, especially in leadership, in school administration, they give everything to everyone else and then they have nothing left because they have taken such poor care of themselves. And if that is one of the ways you make sure you take care of yourself because you need to take care of others. And you can't do that unless you're okay. So I think that's really, helped me quite a bit over the past several years. And, I feel different and I feel like I feel a lot of the stuff I thought, I'm like, I'm getting old. I'm like, no, that wasn't getting old.
Yeah.
It was not healthy. So it has made a difference. So I know that a lot of people think it is a selfish thing that I said. Honestly, I think it's a selfish thing. And especially with little kids, my little kids watch my habits. So they see me running and they run alongside me, and that's something that really, really matters to me, and I think how we model that matters.
I'm really glad you went there because one of the things I was feeling regretful of was as I'm watching our clock. That was something I wanted to ask you about.
Yeah.
Was this transformation, this fitness journey? So I'm really glad, one, that you went there, and two, that I didn't ask about it because then I would have stolen your answer to the big closing question here. Oh man, this has been so much fun. I'm so glad we had a chance to sit down
Yeah.
and have a conversation. I'll be in Orlando again here
Yeah.
fairly soon. Maybe I'll shoot you a
Oh,
text
man.
and see
I'll
if
show
you're
you around.
around. It'd be great to see you. Yeah. So
Listen, anytime anyone comes to Orlando, they have no time for me or my family. It's like they are the most booked
yeah,
people I've ever met in my life, right? Usually
yeah,
people
for
come
sure.
for Disney and they have every second planned for Disney
Yeah.
and Universal, and we like get the leftovers. So I'll
There you
take it.
go. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll see if I can not put you in the leftover bin. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. So, man, this was wonderful, George. Thanks so much for joining me here on Leading Into Leadership.
Thanks for all you do, man. Appreciate you.
All right, folks, just a fantastic conversation with George. So grateful I finally got the chance to sit down with him and record an episode here on the podcast. He's somebody I've met in person a few different times. I've heard him speak. Um, we definitely go back, but really a wonderful opportunity to talk with him here on the podcast. I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. And now it's time for a pep talk. Today on the pep talk, I want to talk about the patchwork quilt that sometimes we create when we are fixing issues with our systems. Now, this actually goes back to a podcast I listened to not too long ago. I've been doing some market research and trying to learn in spaces outside of education. As most of you know, my work has moved outside of just the education space. And so I'm trying to learn as much about other industries as possible. Recently, listening to a healthcare podcast, I heard them talk about an individual talk specifically about what he referred to as a klujocracy. In other words, a patchwork quilt of repairing various systems. In this particular case, he was speaking specifically about the healthcare insurance industry here in the United States and how different actions taken by different administrations, different groups in Congress have fixed certain issues, but ultimately, as a result, have created this patchwork quilt that is rather a system not working. I was in a school earlier this week, and we were talking about some things specific to a portion of the work being done in this school. And it made me think back to that particular podcast, and it made me wonder, are we creating a kludge ourselves, our own kludgocracy, where we, by fixing individual things within our systems, ultimately are not helping, but actually damaging our systems? I don't know that I have the answer. I actually wrote a blog this week. I'll put a link in the show notes for you to check out. And it's not one of those blogs where I feel like I have the answers. I more wrote this particular blog because I'm curious. I reflected on my own career. I reflected on times as a leader when certainly it made sense to do this, to repair something not working well in our system or to serve a group better in our system. But I wonder, did that ultimately strengthen or did it weaken our system? So my challenge for you this week with the pep talk is to just simply think about that, to simply take a step back, get up on the balcony, as I love to tell you to do, but this time think about individual systems, actions you've taken with those systems, and did that strengthen your overall system? Or might it have actually caused more confusion or damaged the system? Hey, that's what I've got for you this week, folks. Thanks so much for listening to the Leaning Into Leadership podcast. Again, make sure you go and check out our sponsors. Check out Hey Tutor. Check out DigiCoach. Links are in the show notes for you. Please, please go check out the amazing work both of those companies are doing. And while you're on the computer, make sure you have rated and given a review to the Leaning Into Leadership podcast. Folks, those are the things that help drive this show through that magical system that will land in front of other people. And while we're at it, maybe you listen to the episode and you think, man, I know somebody who should listen to this. Please share it with them. I love to see us continue to grow, continue to see more and more people having an opportunity to lean into leadership. Get out there and have a real awesome week.